Awesome. Welcome to the Soul's Kitchen podcast. This is episode 15. I'm with Dominique Laundry, who is a relationship life coach, which I know she's so much more than that, and she's going to tell us all about that. Welcome, Dominique.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
Well, thank you for coming on to have this open conversation with me. As I don't know if our viewers know, but we don't plan anything. It's not scripted. We don't edit. We just have a real authentic conversation. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Authentic conversations are one of my favorite things.
Well, that's the whole, me too. And that's why I want to do this podcast. I want to have conversations with people who are living their soul's desire or dreams, or however we want to say that. So authentic is another great word. So tell us a bit about what you do and how you got into it.
Oh gosh, how I got into it. So what I do is,
yes.
So I have come to call myself a relationship coach.
Mm-hmm.
I came to that probably from one of the most circuitous roads you could think of.
Okay.
But the work that I'm doing now is to, I help my clients take their lives off autopilot and to start being really intentional about creating a life that they love, a life that has them excited to get out of bed in the morning. That's the big picture of what I do.
Okay, that is an amazing big picture, but let's unpack that a little bit because it sounds like really juicy. And like, how do you do that?
Yeah. So in the work that I do, I bring the last, well, I'm 57. I probably bring the last 40 years of personal and professional experience to what I do now, right?
Right.
And so my clients are people who the common thread is people who have come to a place in their lives where they realize that what they've been doing isn't working. They've come to a place in their lives where they are deeply dissatisfied with their marriage primarily. So divorce, or the idea of divorce, or the thought of divorce, or actual divorce is the through line. And I see divorce as a catalyst for change. When you come to a place in your relationship where you realize that you're not satisfied with your relationship to the point where you're like, is divorce the option? Is divorce, is this where we're at? The divorce is inevitable for us. And I've come to a place where I can help those clients use that place, coming to the brink of divorce, I call it, as a wake-up call, as a symptom to make you realize that you've been living your life on autopilot, that you've been going through the motions, and you've been sort of like taking whatever life gives you and reacting to it, rather than that you've been the passenger, if you will. I love analogies. I could use an analogy.
I do too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's coming to this place where you realize, holy shit, I've been a passenger this whole time, and I'm arriving at a destination that I don't love. And rather than, if we're talking about working with couples who are on the brink of divorce, and who come to me as a last resort, we either save this marriage or we end it. We either heal this marriage or we end it.
Okay.
So you either, if you take that analogy, you realize you've been sitting, I help you realize you've been sitting in the passenger seat of your car, and you have a choice. You can either get into the driver's seat and decide where you want to go, what you want your relationship to look like, and then become an active leader in your relationship to create that. Or what some people do is they're like, I'm getting out of this car. I'm getting out of this marriage.
Right.
all they do is get into another car and get
Mm-hmm.
back into the
The same
passenger seat.
mission. Mm-hmm.
So
The same.
when I work with clients who have already decided to separate and for whatever reason, working on the relationship is not an option, still the same work, right? It's about realizing that you've been a passenger. You're just further along. You've gotten out of that car now. But
Okay.
until you realize that the problem is not who you married, what job you are in, where you live, or how other people treat you.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that you're unhappy with your life is because you've been
Indeed.
going through the motions, because you've been in the passenger seat and you're living a life that doesn't light you up because you haven't taken the time to ask yourself, what do I want my life to look like? What would
Mm-hmm.
my life look like if it was one that lit me up? And so we work backwards from that. So I help my clients craft a vision for a life that would excite them, for a relationship that would excite them. And then we reverse engineer a plan to get from where they are to where they want to be, either in their relationship or in the case of someone who's already made the decision to separate or to divorce, post divorce.
Okay.
What do you want it to look like? And then let's create it. Let's execute the plan to take you from where you are to where you want to be.
That's amazing. Like you kind of answered my next question at the end there, where sometimes they end up together and sometimes they don't. Because I imagine some people, so is it not the top numbers, but do you have a percentage that might end up together where they thought very much that they were not going to be together, that light bulbs go off? Because I would imagine that the light bulbs will have to go off if both partners.
Yeah.
To move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. Whether or not, so when a couple comes to this place where they're, on the brink of divorce,
Mm,
and they choose to work with me in a relationship coaching container, one of two things happens. Either they are able to heal the marriage, repair the marriage, uh, and move forward together towards the vision that they've created for their relationship, right? Same deal, right? So, like, they're both in the driver's seat
right.
of their relationship, if you will. Or they decide that the relationship has served its purpose and they have different visions now for their lives going
Mm,
forward, and that the best thing for both of them is to bring their marriage to completion and move forward separately or as co-parents if they have children.
right.
Either of those things might happen, but here's the thing: how you navigate that time matters. So
Mhm.
even if they decide that they want to bring their marriage to completion, it still fits into their vision for the future. It's still an intentional, deliberate, okay, it's from that place of what's the vision I have for my
Mm,
life? Does this relationship fit into that vision in its
mhm,
current form? Like,
mhm.
do we make changes to the relationship so that we can get closer to the vision? Or do we bring it to completion, stay as co-parents and move on? Either way, what comes next is going to be more in line with your vision of the
Right.
future. So if you have children and part of your vision then is going to be, listen, do I want to have a peaceful, productive, co-parenting relationship? Or do I, you know, not? I don't know that anyone actually chooses conflict, but
Right.
so depending on the vision you have for the future, you're going to make the decisions today so that they
Mhm.
get you one step closer, not further. And so it allows you to do it in a way that feels in alignment with your soul at the end of the
Right.
day.
Or your
Right? Like
values.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those two come from the soul, right?
Right, of course.
Your vision for the future doesn't come from outside of you. That vision of a
Oh,
life that
absolutely.
lights you up, that's from inside, right? That's your
Inside.
soul's calling.
So do you find though, like with people, and I imagine couples, it would get complicated that one wants to move forward and then, like you said, even if they decide to separate, some people can be so angry that they cannot see, they like, it's almost like an addiction. I find with some people, they want to stay in that anger state. So they don't want to really get along with the other spouse because they're comfortable with that. This is where I'm used to being. This is where I want to be. I can't see it. Do you ever find that happens? And also, can you turn that around?
Yeah.
Or have you turned
So
that around?
now is probably a good time to explain how I came to this work,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
I did not set out to be a relationship coach. In fact,
Okay.
I resisted the idea that
Mhm.
I was a relationship coach for a very long time.
Okay.
Uh, I came to it probably kicking and screaming.
Mhm.
Um, I I became a lawyer. I
Okay.
decided to be a lawyer when I was in high school because I thought that's how I would make a difference.
Mhm.
And it wasn't too long into my career that I realized that that probably wasn't going to be the way for me to make a difference. And
Okay.
so it wasn't my soul's calling. It wasn't my soul's purpose. But I don't I don't believe in regret. And I believe that all of our life experiences are
Mm.
part of the plan to get us to discover our soul's purpose.
Mhm.
So I set out to figure out, what the heck am I supposed to do with this law degree? And so I did a few things. And 13 years ago, I discovered divorce mediation.
Mm.
Divorce, and that's where this awareness of
Okay.
the of uh intentionality started to come into form. So, as a divorce mediator, and I still do divorce mediation, it's very
Mhm.
much a big part of what I do. I work with couples who have decided to end their
Mhm.
marriage,
Okay.
and I help them resolve their legal issues in a way that
Right.
they can both feel pretty good about
Mhm.
moving forward.
Mhm.
And so I've spent the last 13 years with working with probably like 40 couples a year, so do the
Mhm.
math on that, right?
Yeah.
Over 500 couples. And because I meet individually with each spouse as part of the process, I'm so privileged because my clients share
Mm.
really personal things with me. So I have seen over the years how people come to that place in their relationship.
Mhm.
And what I've learned is that oftentimes a marriage doesn't come apart overnight, right? It unravels over months, sometimes years.
Mhm.
And oftentimes couples will stay in a marriage beyond what I call its best before date or its
Mhm.
expiry date,
Mhm.
for all kinds of good reasons, right? Because we don't get married with a view to divorcing.
Mhm.
We've got kids, we've got financial obligations. There's all
Mhm.
kinds of good reasons why people refuse
Stay.
to end the
Mhm.
marriage, even though they've given up trying to
Work on it.
work on it, increase
Mm.
their satisfaction in it. And when that happens, when couples stay in a relationship beyond the best before date, that's when you start to see resentment, and
Mm.
oftentimes that's where things like infidelity or overspending or gambling or the buffering happen.
Mhm.
And so depending on how bad things are, how toxic resentment is toxic to any relationship. So
Mhm.
depending on how toxic that relationship is when they come to me,
Mhm.
you're right. It can be beyond the
Mhm.
point of being able to be healed, and that's where a lot of the that anger and that resentment come in, is because even though, when it gets to that point, chances are neither spouse is happy,
Right.
but there's this refusal to leave, or this bitterness about whoever actually initiates the separation.
Mhm.
The other person can often be angry because they don't want to be going through the
Mhm.
separation, not because the marriage is lovely and they think nothing's wrong with it. And so it can be really tricky to navigate that. And the
Wow.
further along, that's why I always say, look, when a couple comes to me, the 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 earlier I can start to work with them, the sooner after they realize, they come to that. One client I have calls it the Y in the road. I call it,
Mhm.
I call it the sort of the fork in the road, but
Mhm.
the crossroads in your relationship. The sooner they can start to work with you when they first have that realization.
Mm.
Because if you think about it, if you really think about it, when you get to that point where you're like, you know what, we can't continue this way. We either improve things or we
Mhm.
end it. That's
Mhm.
actually a really exciting time. That's your catalyst for change, right?
Right.
Think of think of when you're people who struggle with their weight,
Mm.
right? 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 15, 20. It's not until you get to that point where you're like, enough. I
Right.
can't keep doing what I'm doing. I refuse to continue living the life I'm living.
Mhm.
I refuse to stay 30 pounds heavy. I
Mhm.
I have to do something. That's
Mm.
when change is possible. When you get to that place where you're like, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. And
Mhm.
so, in a way, it's a gift. That's your sign that you
Mm.
have been living on autopilot and what you've been doing isn't working and you have to do something different. For people who don't see that as a catalyst for change, because oftentimes, and
Right.
this is where the bitterness and the anger comes in, oftentimes people are pretty quick to blame the other person. If
Mhm.
you were a different person, if you were different, this marriage would be better, right?
Mhm.
If you were a different person, if you did different things, if you thought different things, if you showed up differently, we would have a different marriage.
Right.
I'm in the passenger seat. If you were driving the car to a better location,
Mhm.
I would like the location better.
Right.
And so we get out of the car, out of the marriage, and we
Mhm.
get into another car, another relationship,
Yeah.
often very quickly, because we think that's the answer. We think the
Mhm.
problem is the person that we chose to drive the
Right.
car. And so the same thing happens again. How many of us have been married more than once
Mhm. Yeah.
and divorced more than once? Right? So until you realize, no, wait a minute. What I've been doing isn't working.
Mhm.
What I've been doing, how
Mhm.
I've been showing up
Yes.
isn't working. And if I want something different, I have to get in the driver's seat. I have to ask myself, what do you want your relationship to look like? What
Mhm.
do you want your life to look like? And how do I get from where I am to where I want to go? I'm going to get behind the driver's wheel and I'm going to lead my life
Right.
towards the destination I want to go to. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. So you come in at a really important time. So how do people like find you? I know you say you're a
Hmm.
lawyer, and there is, I don't know if a lot of people know about this mediation,
So,
you know?
well, this is the way the universe works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If
Mhm.
what's the if Muhammad won't go to the mountain, you bring the
Yeah.
mountain to Muhammad.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Mhm.
right. I'm
Something like
mixing up
that.
my
Yeah.
analogies.
That's okay.
Yeah. So I mean, when I set out and started my divorce mediation practice, my intention was to help people end their marriages in a peaceful, compassionate, loving way,
Right.
heart-centered way, I say,
Mhm. Mhm.
so that they could heal and move forward um, easily and with less strife, with less
Mhm.
emotional turmoil, financial cost, and so that they could um, provide their children with a positive co parenting relationship. You
Right.
can imagine, you've heard of nasty divorces.
Mhm.
It makes it almost impossible to have a positive co-parenting relationship after divorce if it's been
Right.
nasty. So the my goal, my purpose, my the thing, the driving force behind my mediation practice was to help people bring their marriages to completion without uh, wrecking their co-parenting relationship. That's how it
Yeah.
started.
Bit more of
And
a
then I
soft landing.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. And that was my
Yeah.
focus. The children were the
Mhm.
focusing on the children and what was best for the children and how to give our children, because of course I've been through divorce,
Mhm.
the best future possible. Well, the greatest gift you can give your children if you're going to divorce, is a
Mhm.
positive co-parenting relationship when you can. So that's what I set out to do. But then I
Okay.
started realizing that so many couples that were coming to me for
Mhm.
mediation, they had decided that their relationship was not salvageable. Either they had gone to a marriage therapist, or they hadn't,
Mhm.
but they were like, no, we're done. We're absolutely done. So I'm
Right.
like, okay, we're not even talking about fixing it. I'm just going to help you move
Mhm.
forward in a heart-centered way.
Mhm.
But they would confide in me that they didn't want to be ending their marriage, but they
Right.
just felt like there was no option because they
Right.
didn't know how to make it better. They
Mhm.
felt like they had tried and they didn't know how to make it better because they were still in the passenger seat, but of course they didn't know it, and neither did I. I became certified as a coach probably about 7 years ago now,
Okay.
so that I could be a better mediator, so that I could bring
Gotcha.
my coaching tools, right? Because coaching is
Mhm.
all about helping people think differently and look at their problems from a different angle so that you can
Mhm.
come up with a better
Mhm.
solution.
Different solution. Yeah.
Coaching and mediation are a brilliant fit. But then as I was you know, sort of like learning and
Mhm.
starting to coach and learning how to be a better coach, people would come to me for relationship coaching.
Mhm.
And I was like, wait a minute. I, mm, I don't help people save their relationships. I help
Mhm.
you bring your
Mhm.
relationship to completion. And so I resisted it. But if you for anyone who knows coaching like any other trade, the
Mhm.
way that you get when you're learning how to be a coach, the way that you get better at coaching is you coach. And
Right.
so when you're first starting, you're like, "Hey, anybody want coaching?"
Yeah.
And you you coach, especially when you're a life coach, you can coach on anything. So you don't turn away the people who want help with their relationship because you're
Mhm.
like, "Well, I've got to learn, I've got to get better, so
Mhm.
I need the hours, I'll take the hours." And so much to my surprise,
Mhm.
it worked. The same tools that I apply with clients so I had clients who were already divorced
Mhm.
and helping them navigate, especially if they didn't have a positive divorce experience.
Mhm.
People who've gone through the nasty divorce
Right.
are some of the people that I worked with initially to help them, again, create a life that they could get excited about
Mhm.
and move towards that life. Well, that's where it started. But then you start to realize these tools also work for relationships. And so
Mm.
at first I thought the mediation and the coaching they conflict
Separate.
with each other. They're
Yeah.
separate, and certainly you can't be a mediator and a relationship coach, can you? Like you can't do both.
Yeah.
But here's what I realized. The secret to a successful relationship is the same no matter the relationship.
Mhm.
So whether it's a post separation co-parenting
Mhm.
relationship or a marriage, the secret is the same. The formula is the same. And so I was like, well, heck, if I could actually, like when I thought of all of those couples
Mhm.
who would confide in me in mediation, that they didn't want this marriage to be ending and that they still loved their spouse and had just gotten to a place where it seemed like the only option, I thought,
Mhm.
shit, what if I can help them? What
Right.
what if I have the tools that they can use
Mhm.
to actually make changes in their marriage and
Mhm.
provide them with a high level of satisfaction? It's not about a band-aid. It's not about making it good enough to stay. I have these clients that I absolutely love working with. And they've been together something like, I'm going to say, 37 years.
Mhm.
When they came to me on the brink of
Mm.
divorce,
Okay.
um, and someone said, "You've got to go see Dominique. I don't know what she does, but she'll help you."
Mhm.
I don't know
Mhm.
how she does it or
It's a
what she
great
does, but she'll
recommendation.
help you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
go. And so they've been together for that many years, and they have grown children, they have grandchildren,
Mhm.
and they said to me probably about 6 weeks into our work together that not only were they happy and wanting to stay in their marriage, but their marriage was better than it had ever been. Because the tools that I share with my coaching clients are tools that no one teaches us. Communication. Where in school does someone teach us how to have a difficult conversation
They don't.
with someone that matters to us? They don't. Where in school are we taught to ask for what we need in a relationship, and to ask for what we need from the other person so that we can give them what they need? Who teaches us that? No one teaches us that.
No.
And then we're expected as adults to go off into relationships and be successful.
Yeah.
It's the same employer-employee. It's the same. The secret formula for it, it's the same.
And communication too, we're not taught as well, is that a big part of it is listening. A lot of us are, while someone else is talking, thinking about what we're going to say. We've missed what they've said. So anyway, sorry, keep going.
No, for sure. Listening is important. And here's sort of where that comes in. We're also taught to fear conflict. We're taught that conflict is a bad thing. If I have to say something to you or ask you something, and I think you're going to disagree with me, so I'm anticipating conflict. I'm going to be afraid to talk to you about it, because I'm afraid. We've been taught through society or culture or our upbringing that if two people disagree on something, that one of you is right and one of you is wrong, and the only way is to reach an agreement is to convince the other person that they're wrong and you're right. Because if I thought I was wrong, I would change my mind. Right? And so if we disagree, then one of us must be wrong, and sure shit isn't me, or I'd change my mind.
And that's another thing. Even like today, like you're saying, we are not taught that we can each have our own opinion and still have a relationship. We don't one doesn't have to be right or the other one wrong.
No.
And I think a lot of people even end friendships that way. Well, I can't be friends with you anymore because I'm right and you're wrong.
Right. Yeah. And they don't want to have the hard conversation to say, how can we resolve this difference? Because the truth of the matter is, when two people see a problem differently, then what that means is they're looking at it from a different perspective. And they're not seeing the weaknesses or the problems that I'm seeing. But if you can share your vision, if you can communicate your way through, you're actually going to come up with a better solution than if you both just jumped on the first idea.
Well, especially if you're both willing to see the other side.
You have to be willing to see.
My brother, I love this analogy, since you like analogies. He always said, there's 8 sides to a story and all of them are true. Like, people always say, oh, there's 2 sides to the story. Well, I always look at the analogy, like, let's say you're looking at a bottle of wine and we're sitting across from each other. You're looking at one side and I'm looking at the other side. They're completely 2 different sides. It's still a bottle of wine. But there's also all of the other sides of the bottle. So there's really more than even 2 sides. So
100%.
And then how you get to know what's on every side is through conversation about what each person is seeing on the side or the particular part of the bottle that they're looking at. And then you have the whole picture.
Exactly. I love that. And as lawyers, we're taught there's 3 sides, right? Yours, mine, and the truth or something. But yes, that's why when you have a car accident and you have witnesses, there's like so many different. Everyone sees something different. And here's the thing, nobody's wrong. Just because you see it different doesn't mean you're wrong.
But I know, but
what you're seeing.
I agree with you. Absolutely. And if they're willing to if they can calm down and actually listen and see that the other side, and you can put the whole piece together.
That's right. But as long as you see it as a threat, as long as you see that difference in opinion or difference in perspective as a threat, you're not going to listen, to respond, and to hear. You're just going to be reactive. When during COVID, my daughter and I were making puzzles like most other people in the world. And we were sitting around this round table, that table actually that I have behind me. We were sitting around the round table and we were making a puzzle. And we got stuck. We were, probably 2/3 done. And there was this one piece that she just couldn't find. And she's like, I can't find it. I've looked at all the pieces and I just can't find that piece. And I said, stand up, go to the other side of the table and look at the puzzle from the other side. I guarantee you'll find it. She's like, what are you talking about? And she was like, let's do the math, 23 or something. She wasn't a kid.
Right.
I'm like, trust me, it works. So she's like, whatever, I'll humor you. She goes up to the other side of the table, finds the puzzle within 30 seconds. She's like, how did you do that? I'm like, this is what seeing a problem from multiple perspectives allows you to see solutions that you can't see from one perspective.
Right.
That puzzle analogy is what I use. My divorce mediation clients taught me that through working with them, that if you look, everyone's perspective is key to solving the puzzle because everyone is looking at it. If you're lucky, everyone's looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah. Oh, that is so amazing. Really awesome. I imagine, I mean, how you help people, it's just incredible. Like that must be so satisfying.
I love what I mean, I love what I do. I say,
I can tell.
If money was no object, I would do this work for free.
And obviously you got over where, you were resisting it, you said at first. So then you just kind of, a light bulb went off, I guess.
Right.
And then you started doing it. The coaching and the mediation, I guess.
With a lot of resistance. Yeah. A light bulb went off with the mediation. The relationship coaching took a little bit more resistance. But I love the tangent we went on. But the question you asked that I started to answer and led us to that beautiful tangent was, how do you find clients? How do your clients find you? Well, here's the fascinating thing is some clients find me the way I explained those lovely clients did. Someone who knows what I do and hears someone's relationship is in trouble. They're like, go see Dominique. Whatever you do, you got to work with her. And often what happens is someone will call me looking for mediation. And I can't tell you how many times this happens. Between the time that someone books a call and the time that we get on the call, that can be 3 or 4 days, because it takes a lot of courage for someone to pick up the phone and say, okay, I need to talk to you about mediation to see if we can, what that looks like and how that works. So they find my website, they book a call on the website. We get on the phone 2 or 3 or 5 days later, and the first thing out of their mouth is, I was looking for mediation when I called you. I was done when I called you. And now my husband, my wife, and I have been talking the last few days, and I'm not sure we're ready to pull the plug.
Okay.
And so then I say, good news. I can help you with that too. I can help you. I mean, that's my favorite place. You were so sure that you couldn't do it anymore. You actually picked up the phone and tried to find a mediator. That's that point where that perfect catalyst for change. That's where, I mean, everything good is on the other side of that. That's the best time to work with people, because you do have the opportunity to try to heal the marriage. But oftentimes people are angry because they feel like they didn't have a chance to work on the marriage. I can't tell you how many spouses, I'm going to say husbands for the most part, but not exclusively, will say they were surprised when their wife told them that, when the wife said, I think we're done, I want a divorce. More than half of the men are surprised. I didn't see it coming. They didn't realize that they were on the brink of divorce.
Right.
She was. And she'll say, how could you not? I've been telling you I'm unhappy for months or years. How could you not know? surprised, right?
They weren't listening.
They weren't hearing, right?
Yeah.
What one person was saying, communication, back to communication. What one person was saying was different than what the other person was hearing.
This is so true.
That happens so often in communication because we communicate through a clogged filter.
Yeah.
The more history you have with a person, the more it's clogged by your shared experiences. But even us, we've known each other for years, but we haven't spent a lot of time together. We don't have a lot of shared experiences. So the filter that we communicate through is only clogged by our respective experiences. You take a 20-year relationship, that filter's clogged. And so
for sure.
often you're not actually hearing what the other person is saying, but we react to what we heard, not to what they said.
And we're reacting because of our filters too, like from our childhood or whatever 100%. Triggers us. And for sure. Oh, what an 100%. Amazing opportunity for you and for your clients. That's just incredible. So people, have you ever worked with anyone virtually? I'm just thinking of since COVID. So it can work 100%. Either way.
Yeah. So before COVID, I would have said I can't do anything but in person. But it's amazing. It's amazing what you can do virtually. Yeah, I have clients that I've never met in person.
And you do it virtually. That's amazing. So how would people find you? I mean, do you have a website or how does that work?
Okay. I do. Yep. My website is dominiquelaundry.com.
Okay.
There's all kinds of information there. And what's interesting about my website is how I do the work and how I share what I do, how I describe it is continuously evolving because the more I'm stepping into it, the more that I am listening to the nudges and following the nudges, I'm getting more and more clarity on what I do. If you and I had this conversation a year ago, I would not have called myself a relationship coach, and I would not have. No.
Okay. Wow. Do you work with actually people who aren't legally married? Do you work with couples like maybe who have lived together for years and have children, or like all forms of relationship?
Yep. Yeah. When I say that's right, I use the word divorce like synonymously, whether you're in a committed, like a common law relationship, or you're married, even though you don't technically, divorce isn't how you end your relationship. Yes, divorce means married or common law. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so you're kind of like the relationship whisperer. That could be your new title or added to your title.
Someone once called me a conscious relationship coach.
Yeah. Okay.
Because conscious in the sense of taking you from unconscious, from sleepwalking through your relationship, through your life, to becoming conscious and living, showing up in your relationship from a place of being awake instead of asleep.
And something you said there, like I think a lot of people can live their life too unconsciously and then get into a relationship expecting something to the relationship to bring them meaning to their life. And I think what's happening now, and I don't know if you agree with me, a lot of people are kind of healing and going through their own healing so that they can come to a relationship fully whole and not expecting the other person to heal them. Does that make sense?
100%. And so we could have a whole other podcast on that. But let me say this.
And maybe we will. I have another idea, but anyway, we'll talk to you about it after.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
I was single. So I've been married and divorced twice.
Okay.
And after my second marriage, I made the conscious choice. I was like, okay, what's going on? Once, okay, everyone's allowed once. Twice, what you swore that you would, that you'd learned and that you would not be in this place again, but here you are. Both times it was my decision to end the relationship because I felt I didn't have another option. I couldn't see how the relationship could improve. And it couldn't keep going the way it was. So I ended it. And so I made the conscious choice to stay single until I could figure it out. Until I could,
Right.
right? Now, I was single for 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone, 5 of those years by choice. And then the last 2, I was kind of like, okay,
Hey, what's going on?
it's
Yeah.
time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But during that time, that's when I discovered the whole idea of living intentionally and asking yourself, wait a minute, like, what do I even want my life to look like? Only when I get clear on my own what
Mm-hmm.
I want my life to look like,
Mm.
separate from whatever anyone else wants, separate from what your family wants or society wants or your friends want. What do I want? What's
Mm-hmm.
my vision of a life that I love? And once the clearer
Yeah.
picture you have on that, then the more, the closer you get to start creating that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you think about meeting someone, what you say is, we're back in the car analogy. You're like, I'm on the 4 lane and I know where I'm going. So I am driving down the 4 lane. And then all of a sudden, someone comes up in a car beside you and says, hey, where are you going? I'll tell you where I'm going.
Right.
And you're clear. And so if
Right.
they're like, oh, I wasn't
There.
headed to, New York. I was headed to LA. Okay, see ya.
See ya.
Nice seeing you. Have a great trip.
Yeah, I love this. I was actually
Just
having coffee with someone this morning and we talked about this exact thing.
right.
Yeah.
When you know where you're going,
Mm.
it's easier to find someone who's headed in the same general direction. Now, that's not to say that that you put blinders on and you don't. Part of the journey is, as you execute the plan to get from where you are to where you want to go, it's a constant course correcting to make sure that you're on the right course. Have you ever heard that a plane flies off course? A plane that is set,
Right.
the GPS set to where it's going on autopilot, flies off course 80% of the time. The wind and the weather and
Right.
all
That
the
makes
things.
sense.
And so in order to get from where it started to where it's going, it has to constantly, regularly check to see if it's on course and make small tweaks to get back on course when it's off. The sooner you realize you're off course, then it just takes a small change to get back on course.
Right.
So one of the things that I do in my relationship now is
Check-ins.
Weekly check-ins.
Yeah, I think that's great. I was just going to say that. Like, that's what I think. I think the reason people get together changes with, evolves with like generations, right? War times, they got together. You heard of people meeting and marrying within 3 days because the man was going off to war, and oh my God, there was a lot of love going on back then. And then people get married because it was a thing to do, and the wife stays home and has children and whatever. You stay together. The man has affairs or whatever. And then I think it's changing. There's a lot of single women, older women healing, and you get together like in making that conscious choice, and because you want to be together and you're going to direct your course. Like, do you think that's happening now?
Yeah. Well, I hope so. That's
I
my
think it's
hope,
happening.
right?
Yeah. I love that. So like that, I don't think a lot of marriages, and I mean, I don't know, I'm not an expert here, but they didn't check in. They just thought, like, when you say the husbands were surprised, it's because the wife was trying to check in, and maybe it doesn't always just be the husbands, but someone was trying to check in and the other one was just like, no, not, thought everything was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, here's what I think happens. I
Yeah.
think that the notion of a check-in, because here's what a check-in, looks like is, what went well this week, what didn't work,
Right.
and what can we do differently?
Right. Oh, I love
Right.
that.
And so those conversations feel a little bit scary to have at the beginning of a relationship, because you're like, well, I don't want to say what didn't go well. I don't want to talk about what could we do differently. So it's everyone means well. Everyone, both the man and the woman and the woman and the woman and the man, everyone means well.
Sure.
But you wait until there's something that is intolerable. And then you want to do the check-in.
Right. And then the resentment is already built in and all of that.
And you're so far off course, it's going to take
Mhm.
a big course correction. And you're like, how do I bring this up? And how is it going to be received? And
Mhm.
right. But
Yeah.
if instead you do it right out of the gate, and I'm not saying it's easy,
No,
but
but
it's
it's like a
that simple.
practice.
It's
But
that simple.
it's a practice.
Yes.
You want to practice and do that and make
Yeah.
sure that the other person wants to check in with you too. And if they
Yeah.
don't, well, then maybe, stop at
And
this
if you
gas station.
think, well, right, and not to take us, that's good, the gas station,
I
not
don't-
to take us in another direction, but
Yeah.
if you think of an employer-employee relationship,
Mhm.
if you take it out of sometimes it's hard to see when we think of,
Mhm.
because we're so used to thinking of the romantic relationships in a certain
Mhm.
way. But if you think of an employer-employee relationship, doesn't that make perfect sense? As an employee,
Yeah.
don't you want to know whether your performance
Is
is
yeah.
satisfactory or not?
And is
And
even on the right track. Yeah.
if it's on the right track, and
Yeah.
if it's not, we want to know. Think of it. You're an employee. I want to know what went well, what did I do well,
Mhm.
what didn't I do so well, what didn't
Mhm.
work,
Mhm.
and what could I do differently to
Mhm.
improve my performance.
Yeah.
You can see how an employee would want to know, because an employee wants to be satisfied in their job for a really long time. But so in order for that relationship to work, both the employer and the employee need to have a high level of satisfaction in that relationship.
Makes so
Same
much sense.
deal. And same deal with the employer. You've had staff, I've had staff.
Mhm.
You want to know what's going well, like how your performance is going well as an employer, where you're missing, and how you can do things differently so that you can keep your employees,
Mhm.
because staff turnover is costly to a
Yeah.
business, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's the same thing.
Mhm.
It works when you do it in an employer-employee relationship, and it's magical when you do it in a romantic relationship. It
That's
really is.
amazing. That is so amazing. Well, what a beautiful way to close our conversation. I do have a couple questions for you.
Oh my
If you
gosh,
don't
we've been
mind.
on for so long.
Yeah, we have, but that's okay. It's good. I love the way this has flowed. These are questions that I've just been asking everyone kind of at the end. So, what makes you feel most alive?
Well, this work.
This one. I thought so.
This work. This work is listen, nothing after I can spend 6 hours a day front facing clients, but
Mhm.
nothing fills me up like having a really great session with clients where you can
Right.
see that the either the relationship is improving, or like that
Right. The
they're
light bulbs are
starting
going
to
off.
see.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Awesome.
Um,
Okay, I think I alluded to this at the beginning to give you a little bit of warning. What's your ingredient in life? Like, I'm coming from that as like I used to be still a cook, I guess, but and talking about what's cooking in your soul. Like, what would you say an ingredient, a main ingredient in your life would be? It could be an ingredient in food, or it just could be something else.
the magic ingredient
Yeah.
to life,
Mm-hmm.
the
For
secret
you. Yes.
to a life that you love
Yes.
is being intentional,
Mm.
being deliberate, getting out of the passenger seat and
Mm-hmm.
in the driver's seat, and
Love that.
asking yourself, where do I want to go?
Mm.
And then that's part of it.
Mhm.
But the intentionality comes from, okay, so if that's where I want to go,
Mhm.
what do I have to do today to get me
Mhm.
one step closer to that? And I use it, so that's in the macro, but I
Mhm.
use it in the micro. So before
Mhm.
coming on here with you today,
Mhm.
I asked myself, what do I want to see
Mm.
when I look back on my
Right.
conversation with Lisa?
Okay.
And when you ask that question, you answer it, and then that informs your decision, like
Mhm.
how I'm going to show up, right? So just
Mm.
to
Yeah.
follow that example through, I was like, I want to um I want it to look back and have it be authentic and real, and
Mm.
let whatever's meant to come up come up.
Mhm.
So what that meant was I didn't really prepare. I journaled the way I would journal every day. And obviously I journaled about this, but there's no script. I didn't prepare.
No.
You
Yeah.
can see, I put that here in case I wanted to take notes while we were
Right.
talking. Because I wanted it to feel a certain way looking back on it, that helped me decide what to do before.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. And I guess what's your biggest lesson that you've learned in life? I think that we've all we've answered it, but you could.
Biggest lesson,
Yeah.
nothing's ever wasted.
Oh,
Nothing.
I love that. Nothing's ever wasted. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dominique Laundry. I really loved our conversation. I'm so glad that you agreed to come on the Soul's Kitchen with me today. And
Thank you, Lisa.
I hope we get to do it again.
I loved it. I would love to. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, take care and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.